السلام عليكم. نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين، يا خاتم النبيين، يا شفيع المذنبين، يا أنيس الغريبين، يا رحمة للعالمين، صلى الله عليه وسلم. Today, inshallah, we'll cover, or at least I intend, is kind of a review and something we've talked about a lot recently when talking about Ahlul Bayt. But these are questions that keep coming up, issues that keep coming up. And the solutions to the issues are within these characteristics. So I want to talk about those 6 characteristics again from somewhat of a different perspective, inshallah. So if everybody remembers, when Imam Zain al-Abidin is taken from Karbala to Kufa and ends up in Damascus, there in the masjid he gives a khutbah. And part of the khutbah he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has distinguished Ahlul Bayt, the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with 6 characteristics. So the first of these, of course, is ilm, knowledge, and then hilm, forbearance, sakhawat, which is generosity, fasahat, which is eloquence, shuja'at, which is courage, and then love in the hearts of the people, that the people are naturally inclined to love them. This is the natural inclination of mankind, is to love them. So if anyone doesn't love them, then you know that they're going against their own natural inclinations. Okay? The last of these is one of those, is fadl ikhtisasi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has just given to them. There's something that we can also attain, but the attaining has to come through trying to attain the other characteristics. If we attain the other characteristics, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also give us the 6th one as a bonus. These characteristics are inherent within Ahlul Bayt. It's like there's a Sayyid who I know who's truly Sayyid. So he says, when I see someone claiming to be Sayyid and he's stingy, then I start questioning whether he's actually Sayyid or not. So I want to start off with the first, because the first answers a lot of things. Which is ilm, knowledge. And knowledge, as we've talked about before, knowledge is not just somebody knows something. Here, when we specify knowledge, we're talking about knowledge that is beneficial. And not just knowledge that will benefit us in this world, but also knowledge that will benefit us in the next. Because there are people that, you say, oh, he's very knowledgeable. But then you have to look at, okay, when he speaks or when he delivers his knowledge, where does that take your heart? Knowledge is not knowledge if it does not make you closer to Rasulullah. If it does not increase you in your love for Rasulullah, in your awe and respect and honor of Rasulullah, then it's not knowledge from the standpoint that we're talking about knowledge. And of course, for Ahlul Bayt, this is, all of these characteristics are part of their household. Rasulullah said, "Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babuha," that I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its door. So if we want to attain true knowledge, then we have to go through that door. And which also means you have to acknowledge that door. Before you can go through a door, you have to acknowledge the door. And this isn't just any door, this is a door that is mandatory for us all also to love. So there is no iman without the love of Ahlul Bayt. This all comes back to part of knowledge. Because these days you see plenty of people who, and we say these days it's become more apparent because of YouTube and social media. So you get everybody speaking and everybody listening. You know, before you have somebody speaking and the audience was limited. Now you got a global audience. So this isn't new, because even in the past, you know, when we look at the history like of the Khawarij, these were people who were very knowledgeable from the standpoint of that they knew Arabic grammar, they knew Arabic, they knew the Quran, they knew the Hadith. But they really had no knowledge, because none of that knowledge increased them in their love of Rasulullah, in their love of Ahlul Bayt. And even when they delivered that knowledge, it did not increase the people listening in their love of Rasulullah or in their love of Ahlul Bayt. And so these days when we hear somebody and he's quoting the Quran and he's reciting eloquently and he's talking about, you know, the Hadith, and he can be talking about the Seerah, you know, the big question that you have to ask yourself is, when I listen to him, does that increase me in my love of Rasulullah? Or does it increase me in questioning the authority and the knowledge of Rasulullah? If it does the first, then you can say, yes, this is knowledge. But if it does the second, then you know that this is not true knowledge, this is the knowledge of shaitan. And so just because somebody is quoting the Quran, and he's eloquent in his speech, doesn't mean that he has true knowledge. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this right in the beginning, in Surah Baqarah, you know, verse number 26. And the verse starts off with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله لا يستحيي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها فأما الذين آمنوا فيعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وأما الذين كفروا فيقولون ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا يضل به كثيرا ويهدي به كثيرا وما يضل به إلا الفاسقين. Allah disdains not to use the similitude of things. You know, this verse was revealed because, you know, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives many similitudes. He talks about the ant, He talks about the bee, He talks about the spider, you know, things that many people think of as insignificant. You know, and yet He gives examples of this for us to learn. So some of those, you know, this is some of the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, and the disbelievers. They, you know, why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about these insignificant things? So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. He doesn't hesitate in giving you examples of things that you consider insignificant. So Allah disdains not to use the similitude of things, even of a gnat, as well as anything above it, or even of a mosquito, as well as anything above it. Those who believe know that it is the truth from their Lord, but those who reject faith say, what means Allah by this similitude? By it He causes many, and meaning the Quran here, by His speech, He says, by it He causes many to stray. That يُذِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا. So not just a few, kathrat, many go astray from it. But then He also says, and by it He causes many not to stray, to be led astray. He gives guidance to many, except those who forsake the path. And وَمَا يُذِلُّ بِهِ إِلَّا الْفَاسِقِينَ. The fasiq, He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give. Those are the ones who through this book go on the wrong way. Then the next verse, الَّذِينَ يَنْقُضُونَ عَهْدَ اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مِيثَاقِهِ وَيَقْطَعُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَنْ يُوصَلَ وَيُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. Those who break Allah's covenant after it is ratified, and those who sounder what Allah has ordered to be joined, or who split away what Allah has ordered to be joined, and do mischief on the earth. These cause loss only to themselves. And so those who break Allah's covenant, first covenant that He made with us, Alastu bi Rabbikum, am I not your Lord? This is before we even came to the world. Everybody, or the souls responded, Bala, of course. So everybody ratifies the covenant. And then we come into this world and we think we forgot. The reality is that internally we will remember. Because if you get in trouble, who do you remember? Your Lord. So internally we remember, even though superficially we say, we don't remember. So those who break the covenant, those who break what Allah has joined. So, like relation and kinship and stuff like this, things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained to be together, they break those things. And who do mischief on the earth. These are those who lose, who are the fasiqun, humul khasirun, those who have lost. It's interesting here. When Adam al-Islam and Bibi Hawa, when they ate from the tree, or when they approached the tree in Jannah, they were told not to come near this tree, this shajar. When they approached that tree, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, did I not tell you not to approach this tree, and did I not tell you that shaitan is your avowed enemy? What did they say? Both of them immediately fell into prostration and say, رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Same word, khasara. That, O our Lord, we have truly wronged ourselves, and if you are not forgiving and merciful, then we will be destroyed, we will be lost. Because Sirat al-Mustaqim is the path you're supposed to be on. If you stray from that path, now you are lost. Sirat al-Mustaqim is the only path that will take us to Allah. Anything away from that path will take us not to Allah, which is not where you want to be. It's khasara, it's being lost. And Osman says that these are the ones who are lost. Okay. But he also specifies in the Quran in the beginning, when he said, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So right at the beginning, this is the book in which there is guidance sure, or there is no doubt, without doubt, to those who fear, those who have taqwa. Okay, so these are the ones who from the knowledge of the Quran will gain benefit. Everybody else will lose. They may be able to rattle off the verses, they may be able to tell you the history. But when it comes to that connection, this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, teach your children 3 things. The first thing was the love of your Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second thing was the love of his household. And the third thing was the recitation of the Quran. So love can also be learned. Love is also part of knowledge. And true love is knowledge. But so he says, to do this, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about this, he says that in this book, again he tells us, يُذِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَيَهْدِ بِهِ كَثِيرًا. That in this book, it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, he causes to stray many, and he guides many. Because it's what you have in your own heart. If you come to this book with taqwa, meaning with the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you will attain guidance. You will attain that knowledge which is beneficial. If you come to this book without humbling yourself before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, without, without acknowledging that he is better than yourself, then there is no guidance for you, there's only misguidance. And this is why in Surah Hujurat, again, we keep coming back to this verse over and over and over again, because it is so significant. Surah Hujurat, which is Surah number 49. So the third verse. إن الذين يغضون أصواتهم عند رسول الله أولئك الذين امتحن الله قلوبهم للتقوى لهم مغفرة وأجر عظيم. Those that lower their voices in the presence of Allah's Messenger. Again, what does that mean? Why are you going to lower your voice? It means you humble yourself. You show humility before Him. Their hearts has Allah tested for taqwa. For them is forgiveness and a great reward. So again, it comes back to, okay, these are the people that are going to benefit from this book. These are the people that will attain knowledge that is beneficial. And so again, coming back to that point, what is knowledge? Knowledge is whatever makes you closer to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whatever increases you in his love, in awe for him, in honoring him, in respecting him. This is knowledge. And so this is why, when you go to a certain place and, it's supposed to be a place of worship, and you don't even see the name of Rasulullah anywhere, then that's not knowledge. That's not a place of knowledge. When you're listening to somebody, and it doesn't matter how many titles he has before his name or how many titles he has after his name. Again, if when you're listening to him, by listening to him, you're not becoming more in awe of Rasulullah. And as we talked about, even last night and in Jummah, when Abu Bakr radiallahu, when Abu Jahl comes to him, and he says that, if somebody says to you that they went from overnight from Mecca to Jerusalem and back, what would you say? He said, I say that they're lying. He said, well, this is what your friend Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying. He said, well, if he's saying it, he's saying the truth, because I see more miraculous things from him every day. Again, if you look at the mindset of Abu Bakr, and anyone who questions the knowledge of Abu Bakr needs to question his own iman. So you look at the mindset of Abu Bakr, and you immediately, he says, anything you tell me about him is not enough. His honor, his status is far beyond what anyone can say. The only one who knows Rasulullah is the Lord of Rasulullah, is Allah. We try to know him, knowing that we fall short. And if we don't have that attitude, if we think, we can, somebody can praise him in excess. And again, anyone who understands Muhammadur Rasulullah, that he is the messenger of Allah, automatically knows that he is not Allah. He is not God, he is not the creator. So anyone who says Muhammadur Rasulullah, there's no way he can praise Rasulullah in excess. Because in order to be able to praise someone in excess, you have to know where their limit is. We don't even know where his beginning is. So this is why, we have to be very careful with so-called people of knowledge these days. And it's a common term these days, I'm talib ilm. I'm a seeker of knowledge. They become seeker of knowledge so much that they forget what they're trying to seek in actuality. The knowledge is simply a tool The knowledge should be looked at as a tool to seek your Lord. And there is no attaining the knowledge of Allah without attaining the knowledge of Rasulullah. Period. And in order to understand knowledge, we have to go back to Ahlul Bayt. Period. Because there is no understanding of the Quran without them. The second thing that he talks about is hilm. And as we've talked about before, hilm is one of these words that really isn't understood very well. And of course, it's translated as forbearance, meaning somebody does something wrong to you, but you bear it with patience. But patience is only really a part of hilm. Because in order to have hilm, you have to have somebody who's doing the wrong thing to someone else. That someone who the wrong thing is being done to, he knows it's being done to him, but it does not change him, it does not affect him. It does not change the way he deals with anybody, including the one who's doing the oppression to him. And again, if we want to see the perfection of hilm, we have to look at Ahlul Bayt. So when we look at Ahlul Bayt, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, that we talked about before, when he returns to Medina Munawwara after handing over the rule, after walking away from the rule, after walking away from a kingdom that would have been a third of the known world, he comes back to Medina Munawwara and constantly being badgered, constantly being abused, verbally abused, physically abused. They didn't go outright and torture him, but they would make everything difficult for him. Constantly having to listen to people abusing his father, Sayyidina Ali Karamallah, verbally. And of course, at the forefront of this is Marwan bin Hakam, as we've talked about before. But the interesting thing is Imam Hassan al-Islam, whenever Marwan would come with a problem, because these people also know, okay, when you have problems, who do you go to? Imam Hassan al-Islam would deal with him just like he dealt with everybody else. He didn't deal with him any differently than he would have dealt with him in any other circumstance. We look at Imam Zayn al-Abidin. So when Imam Zayn al-Abidin returns from Damascus to Medina Munawwara, you have the civil war that takes place. When Medina Munawwara comes into the control of Abdullah ibn Hanzala and the other companions, now all of these people from Banu Umayyah are running here and there. These are the same people who abused Imam Zayn al-Abidin. These are the same people who had the father of Imam Zayn al-Abidin killed. These are the same people who abused his father, who abused him, who abused all of them. Yet, when Marwan needs refuge, whose house does he go to? Imam Zayn al-Abidin. And how does Imam Zayn al-Abidin deal with him? Just like he would have dealt with anybody else. No different. Because these are truly the sons of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, when we look at this, when we look at Fatih Makkah, Fatih Makkah when Rasulullah SAW comes and conquers Makkah. Again, these are the same people who kicked him out of his city. The same people who killed his uncle. The same people who abused him, tortured him, tortured his family, tortured his companions, killed his companions. The same people who killed one of his daughters, Zainab. I mean, she died because of a wound that she suffered when she was coming to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A few years later she passed. But she passed before Fatih Makkah. No, she passed right around the time, or shortly after Fatih Makkah. Okay. But again, the same people who caused this torture for her. And he enters the city and he says what? He makes the declaration that whoever seeks refuge in the house of Abu Sufyan is safe. Whoever seeks refuge in the house of Abu Jahl is safe. Whoever seeks refuge anywhere is safe. There was a list of 10 people who were ordered to be killed on sight. But if you look at the crimes of those people, those were people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said that these are, they have no refuge. But all these other people, again, this is what hilm is. These are people, like the saying here, like water off a duck's back. So people come and they're abusive and whatever, as far as from a personal standpoint, it's water off their back. When it comes to the rights of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that changes everything. But for their own personal issues and any other issues, it's just water off their back. I mean, no one can do anything worse to us than what Marwan did to that household. And yet still, again, when he seeks refuge, he comes to the house of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Imam Zayn al-Abidin takes him into his house. So this is hidden. That forbearance. Generosity. The sakhawat, there's no limit here. These are the same people who, when they themselves are hungry, will give someone else food. When they themselves don't have any clothes, will give somebody else clothing. When they themselves have no shelter, they will give shelter to everyone else. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in various places in the Quran. In Surah Insan, we've talked about that kind of extensively in the past. This is the whole Surah Dahr, or Insan. The whole Surah is revealed in honor of Ahlul Bayt. So, eloquence, and we've talked about this many times before. If you listen to them, to the eloquence and how they use the words, and true eloquence comes to the praising of Rasulullah. If you look, this is how you beautify a language. If you want to beautify your language, then you need to say poetry in honor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put beauty into that language. Doesn't matter what language it is. No language can attain any beauty unless there is poetry within it that honors Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But this is also where eloquence comes. So, again, this is part of that household, but these are things that if we try to connect ourselves with true knowledge, which is connecting ourselves to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and try to adhere, to the hilm and the generosity, then the eloquence, in the sense that we praise, when we speak, we praise Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will beautify our words, because it's not our words. When you praise the beloved, when you praise the one who is the most beautiful. And this gets back to, again, like with Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him half the beauty of the universe. Yet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the beauty of the universe. So simply by remembering him, by talking about him, by praising him, we think we're praising him, but by praising him, we are actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then praises us. When we say something good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives strength to our tongues. It's interesting. With Hassan bin Thabit, radiallahu anhu. He was one of the poets of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he is, of course, amongst the poets of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is probably one of the best well-known poets of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when he would stand up to say poetry honoring and defending, because the poetry simply wasn't honoring Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was also defending him from his enemies. And if you really read his poetry, then he was also attacking the enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because a lot of people say, like in a naat, you should only mention what's good. No, because in that naat, they would also, go after those who are attacking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. So, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would spread out his sheet and have Hassan stand up and recite this poetry, and he would say, Rasulullah would say, "Oh Allah, strengthen his tongue with the Jibreel, through Jibreel." So this is, again, so if we also, praise him and talk about him, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will strengthen our tongues. Because no one, if somebody is trying to praise Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him the strength to be able to do that. But we have to have the right attitude to begin with. We have to have the right knowledge to begin with. Our Shaykh Sayyid Muhammad Yusuf Ali Sulaimani rahmatullah used to say that, none of Allah's friends are ignorant. He says, you don't want an ignorant friend in this world. Why do you think Allah would wants ignorant friends? Either they have the knowledge before He makes them or accepts them as His friends, or He gives them the knowledge as He accepts them as His friends. And again, the knowledge is what's going to bring you closer to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Courage, unfortunately, we live in an era of cowards, and we see this with everything that's going on in the ummah, everything that's going on in the world. We see this. is how people change. Yeah. It's also interesting that they're saying that family makes a man a coward. Before he got married, I'm going to do this and that, and nobody can mess with him. Then he gets married and he has kids, and now it's all, then there's always some excuse. Wealth also makes people cowards. And, this is throughout history. We should be very apparent today. And those who want to control the Muslims, they understand this point as well. This is why when the British came, what did they do? They first attacked the wealthy people and said, look, if you want to keep your wealth, then you have to follow our agenda. You have to promote our agenda. And even in India, British, when the British came into India, that's what they did. They went after them first, and then they went after the scholars. Because through them, now they can start bribing the scholars. So money makes people cowards. Because, you think, oh, I don't want to lose this. You have a certain status or a certain social presence or class or certain conveniences that you live by, and you don't want to lose them, and so it makes people cowards. What makes people courageous is the true love of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because that true love, the one who truly loves them now is willing to give up everything for that love. Now, nothing else matters. And when we look at Ahlul Bayt, we look at people who have true reliance on Allah, true love of Allah, true love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and true reliance on Allah. They understand that Allah is Ar-Raziq, that He is the provider. They understand also, like Ibrahim al-Islam when he's debating with Namrud, he says that my Lord gives life and my Lord gives death. So they understand that death cannot come to us unless Allah wills. So nothing frightens them. You can't frighten them because you're going to take something away, because they also understand that Allah is the one who gave it. So if it goes away, Allah takes it. So they cannot be bribed. They cannot be, you cannot scare them. These are the true courageous people. But even that courage is linked to that true knowledge. So now coming to the last point, or last characteristic that he mentions, is love in the hearts of the people. That the people are naturally inclined to love them. And when we look at Ahlul Bayt, we see this natural inclination to love them, to the extent that even their enemies have to praise them. When Imam Zain al-Abidin, when he goes for Hajj one year, as he's walking up to Hajar Aswad, there's so many people there that even the crown prince who had come as the Amir of the Hajj couldn't get close to Hajar Aswad. And yet when Imam Zain al-Abidin comes, it's like the parting of the sea. Everyone gives way, and he comes and he calmly kisses Hajar Aswad. Because Allah put the love in their hearts for him. And at that moment, not everyone, you also have people that who are supporters of Banu Umayyah. And you have to understand, this is a whole crowd of Hajj. So you have everybody there, including the supporters of Banu Umayyah. Even they gave way to him. It's interesting, there's a story of Sayyid Abdul Qadir Jilani, rahmatullah alayhi, Bari Pir Sahib. So this scholar who had heard about him from a different city, so he comes and he wants to meet him. So he travels. And when he arrives, he finds, when Sayyid Abdul Qadir Jilani, rahmatullah, sitting in the masjid by himself, no one's around him. So he finds this very odd, because they're used to, the big scholars, they have their entourage, everybody, asking this and that. And then, they talk for a little while and they start walking outside, and he keeps thinking this, they're walking. And then shortly as they're walking, suddenly this huge crowd comes. Like what the scholar was thinking should be happening. Everybody's asking him questions. And then shortly thereafter, the crowd dissipates. And then he says, Sayyid al-Qadir Jilani says to that scholar, he says, you were thinking that, no one's around, so it must not be that significant. He says, when I want them here, they'll be here. And when I don't want them, when I want to be by myself, I am by myself. Because they have control over the hearts of the people. And this is a gift to them, which also Allah gives this gift to many others under the condition that they have they have attained that true knowledge, that true love. But which starts with and these other characteristics, which starts with the knowledge and then the hilm. And of these, I think, hilm, of course, even just by the meaning of hilm, the forbearance is probably the most difficult. But hilm is, this again, if we want to be close to Ahlul Bayt, then we have to we have to work towards attaining that. Water off the back, or the duck's back. Have you ever seen water on a duck's back? It doesn't stay there. So anything anyone does to you personally, it just goes off. It doesn't matter. So, any questions so far? Because this is also part of the answer to the question you had asked, I guess, last time you were here, about how do you know? And this gets back to that, if you're sitting in their presence and it increases you. So if you're sitting in somebody's presence, or if you're listening to somebody and they're talking about, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't have the knowledge of the unseen, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't know what was on his back, or Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't know what was on the other side of the wall, or Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't have the authority to do this. That is not increasing you in your love for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or your awe of him. So this is, but they come at you in a very sneaky way these days. And they talk about, we have to follow the Sunnah. Yeah, but, which is true. It's a true statement. But, before following the Sunnah, you have to love him first. Because Abu Jahl also had a beard. The hypocrites in Medina Munawwara, they followed the Sunnah better than we follow the Sunnah. If you look at it apparently. Because they knew that if they wavered in the least, people would know, who this guy is. But every chance they got, they would always throw something in the mix. You know, it's like they'll say, like these days the famous thing is, or one of the more common things is, that, you know, we need to love Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and all of this, you know, but we shouldn't praise him in excess. What do you mean by that? How can you do that? No one does that. Every Muslim says Muhammadur Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. No one says he's God or son of God or part of God or anything else. And if you listen to these people, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposes them. The only thing is, you know, it's like, well, before I get into that aspect, sometimes you can go and you listen to somebody and they may be very good in reality, but I'm not getting anything from it. There, the issue is the transmitter might be right, the receiver is having problems. So you have to look at yourself. Okay. Other times, you know, but there are many times, and most of the times, you know, if I say, like, you know, if I say, something, you know, one way to kind of look at this is if I just said this in general, I don't know who's saying it, someone just made a statement like this, and I don't even know who said it, would that statement offend me? So somebody comes up, you know, and he says, oh, your father, he didn't know anything. So would that offend me? Yeah, it would offend me. Even if my father may not have known anything. But then he's making that same statement about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and why doesn't it offend me now? You know, like if I say, okay, if somebody compares the knowledge of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to Jim or Joe, should that offend you? And of course it should offend you. And so they say, oh, see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he only knew what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. He only had the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. I mean, it's a true statement, but their intention is something very different. Because they're trying to make you think, by making that statement, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only gave him very limited knowledge. There is not a question that I can think of, or anybody else in creation can think of, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not already given Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that knowledge. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith and Sahih Muslim, he makes the statement, ask me anything. How can he say that if he doesn't have the answer? And nothing that comes from the lips of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam can be wrong. And everything that comes from the lips of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is nothing except revelation. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants him to say. And so when you listen to these people also, you will find that they all expose themselves at some point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposes them, but still people don't get it. And this is what we were talking about last night at one of the gatherings last night, is people still don't get it. And you know, they talk bad, or they'll talk and they'll talk negatively about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then when you catch them on it, they'll turn around, oh no, I was just saying this, so see, it's a miracle. Yeah. But in that same statement, they will attack the Quran and they will attack Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. You know, so a simple example of this, you know, is like, you know, you have one of the founders of Deoband, Qasim Nanatwi, and one of the other scholars that they respect, who wrote that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can tell a lie. He doesn't tell a lie, but he can tell a lie because because he says in the Quran, وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ, and they translate that as Allah can do anything. when the actual wording is, even if I take a word for word, and the actual meaning is Allah has authority over everything. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, refutes that statement already in the Quran when He says قَوْلُهُ الْحَقِّ, which means that whatever Allah says is haqq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not like us that He needs some criteria to see, everybody agrees that this color is red, so I will call this red. Whatever He says is, period. It doesn't matter what everybody else agrees upon or not. So they'll turn around and say, no. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can do anything. So amongst anything is telling a lie. Well, amongst anything, there are many other things, which I won't even mention. I can let you think about that. There are many things. If I take that meaning of, He can do anything. This is the same exact reasoning that there are Christians that say, see, God can do anything, so He had a son. So what's the difference between you and them then? The reality is they're not. And so these same people who challenge the authority and challenge the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's not limited just to that. If you start really listening to them, and like the guy recently, Tariq Masood, in his criticism of the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which he said was a miracle, in his criticism of the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he also criticizes the Quran. You all see the grammatical mistakes in the Quran. Because, the scribes, when they write, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited it correctly, but the scribes, they wrote it incorrectly. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't know. And that got transmitted just the way they wrote it. But it doesn't end there, because if you really think about it, let's say I accept, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't know, which is also incorrect, but let's say I accept that. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala couldn't tell him that, he wrote it incorrectly. So that goes back to Allah in reality. It's like some people who say that, prophethood was actually meant for Ali, but by mistake, Jibreel Islam gave it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because they looked similar. Of course, Ali at that time was 10, Rasulullah at that time is 40 when they're talking about this. But they look similar, so he by mistake gave it to Rasulullah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala couldn't find someone better to do the job, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala couldn't fix the job later if he made a mistake. Just the reasoning of these people, which is the same reasoning as shaitan. So, any questions? Go on. Yeah.
He was 60. He was a restless person there. As you are old, you don't need to come to
the battle.
So, with his poetry, he made the mouth shut of the enemies. So later on, your words are more greater than the sword.
Yeah. So he's talking about Hassan bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu. Hassan bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu was older. He was also physically weaker. And so, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had excused him from the physical fighting in the battles. But he would go with the armies. And he was the poet. And through his poetry, he would, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that your words are stronger than the arrows of the people. And that was his sword, is his words. Because his words not only struck fear into the hearts of the enemy, but they also gave strength to the believers, to do what they needed to do. And, so he is that poet, again, who he's distinguished amongst the poets. He's the most famous amongst them. It's interesting, of course, he's in Medina Munawwara. Before that, though, the same job that Hassan bin Thabit was doing in Medina was done by the uncle of Rasulullah, Hazrat Abu Talib in Makkah. So he would do the poetry against the enemies of Rasulullah and defending Rasulullah. And that's why there's actually a diwan, there's a booklet of poems of Hazrat Abu Talib that's been published, in which he acknowledges Rasulullah as Rasulullah in his poetry. So, anything else?
For the poetry, you talk about poetry, like the books and stuff. There's something like, just for example, how we read the Quran and the Hadith is like something like, if we get the book, is that something we could recite at home, or is that something like?
Yeah. So the question is, about the poetry. If you get it, is that something that you can also recite? Yes, and there are some. I'll have to see if there's a translation. Because we find a lot of this. Some of the poetry you'll find in the Hadith. So where companions will talk about certain poetry that was said. And then a lot of it you find in the books of the history books. But there are collections of these poems. A lot of those collections are, of course, in Arabic, or there's also but they've been translated into various languages. I don't know if they've been translated into, or how many of them have been translated into English. I know some of them have, but I don't know how many. So it might be. I'll see if I can find something. Inshallah.
Maybe something like recite after the making a salat, or that is just.
Yeah, after. You can do that after salat, or you can do that any other time. Of course, this isn't part of salat. So this is something you can do at any time. And of course, like Hassan bin Thabit, one of his famous poems is وَأَحْسَنُ مِنْكَ لَمْ تَرُقَتُّ عَيْنِي وَأَجْمَلُ مِنْكَ لَمْ تَلِدِ النِّسَاءُ خُلِقْتَ مُبَرًّا مِنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ كَأَنَّكَ قَدْ خُلِقْتَ كَمَا تَشَاءُ, which means that وَأَحْسَنُ مِنْكَ لَمْ تَرُقَتُّ عَيْنِي, that my eye has never seen anyone more beautiful than you. وَأَجْمَلُ مِنْكَ لَمْ تَلِدِ النِّسَاءُ, and no woman has given birth to anyone more beautiful than you. Well, ahsan, it also means beauty, but here ahsan also includes the beauty of the character and everything else. And وَأَجْمَلْ jamal, kind of more towards the physical beauty. But they're both included. So he's talking about beauty in every aspect. And then the next two verses are very interesting, because in the next verse he says خُلِقْتَ مُبَرًّا مِنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ خُلِقْتَ مُبَرًّا مِنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ, that you were created without any faults, without any shortcomings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you, and he's saying this, he's not just somewhere, out somewhere saying this. He's saying this poetry in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again, he had laid out his sheet and told Hassan to stand up and say something. And so this is, at the minimum, this is Hadith al-Taqriri. Hadith al-Taqriri is where the companions did something in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he did not object. That also becomes law. His silence, the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are law. The silence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is law. That does not apply to anybody else. So this is, but it's even more than that, because it'd be one thing if Hassan simply came himself and got up and he said the poetry. Here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is commanding him say something, and then he says this: خُلِقْتَ مُبَرًّا مِنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ, that you are created without any faults. Not having knowledge is a fault. Not knowing something is a fault. And here he's saying you were created without any faults. meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given you the knowledge. Not having authority is a fault. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you mukhtar kul, authority over everything. To the extent that He is the Shari, He is the one who makes the Sharia. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that whatever وَآتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. That whatever He gives you, take it, and whatever He tells you to stay away from it. I mean, what more authority can you have? So anyone who said, oh, He didn't have authority to do this or that, the reason He didn't do certain things is for us, because He's merciful. And He says, I would have made miswak mandatory on you, but I felt that it would be hard on you. Again, His authority, but His rahmah, His mercy, He says, no, I'm not going to make this like this for you. He could have made Taraweeh in Ramadan fard for us, but He did not, out of His mercy. He could have made tahajjud fard for us. It was fard for Him. It was an obligation on Him. But again, His mercy. خُلِقْتَ مُبَرَّأً مِنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ كَأَنَّكَ قَدْ خُلِقْتَ كَمَا تَشَاءُ. As if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you the way you wanted to be created. I mean, just delve into the depths of that statement. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the choice as how you want to be created, would there be any imperfection in you? No. So we see the perfection of His physical perfection, character perfection, perfect in every aspect, perfection in His submission to His Lord. Everything about Him, perfection. Beauty and perfection. This is why when Aisha Siddiqa was asked about His physical beauty, she said that if the friends of Zulaykha had seen Rasulullah in the place of Yusuf alayhi salam, they would have cut their hearts instead of their hands. You know, when Yusuf alayhi salam was brought forward, what do? They cut their hands, say, oh, this is an angel, this isn't a human. This isn't a human, this is an angel. They're cutting their hands, they don't even know it. They're so in awe of His beauty. But why didn't everyone else react the same way to Rasulullah as the women of Egypt reacted to Yusuf alayhi salam? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed in front of us veils so we couldn't see His true beauty. Otherwise, everyone would be crazy. Same thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did when Yusuf alayhi salam came out of jail. You don't see the women reacting the same way now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that veil, so now you can't, yeah, he's beautiful, he's handsome, but you don't see that actual beauty to go to that extent. So He is perfection upon perfection. The perfect Lord, the perfect Creator, Allah, creating the perfect creation and naming Him Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But this is, and again, I'll see if I can find some of those poetries, inshallah. Because, and especially when you look at like Hassan bin Sabit and Hazrat Abu Talib, like I said, I know they've been collected. The question is translations. So we'll see. Anything else? No, good. Alhamdulillah. So again, when you, and this, why I keep reiterating this point over and over and over again, is because this is the fitna that we're in. These are the trials and tribulations that we're dealing with. Whenever you're listening to anyone, and and instead of increasing you in your love and awe of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you start questioning things about him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, yeah, I don't need to be listening to this automatically. Even if he's saying, oh, we need to follow the sunnah, because this is how they come. We need to follow the sunnah, and we need to do this. It doesn't matter whether he's on the mimbar, with a jubba and a tasbih and a miswak and everything else. The facade, Iblis had that facade. That's why he was Iblis. Because he donned the dress of the angels. He was still Iblis. He was still Shaitan. And so now we see Shaitan in the guise of men. And they bring out verses of the Quran, and it's interesting because they'll apply verses of the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals specifically for the disbelievers. If you read those verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that that intercession will not benefit them. You read those verses, every single one of those verses is talking about the disbelievers. None of those verses are talking about the believers, because the believers will benefit from the intercession of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they apply the verses that are for the disbelievers upon the believers. So you have to be very careful, when they start quoting the Quran, and even with me, you need to look at the context. That's why I have no problems with people asking questions. To explain, okay, this is why I'm saying this, because this is the context of what's being said. And that's important to understand in order to understand things, is what is the context? Who is it being addressed to? And this gets back to even, again, the knowledge of Ali. He was the only companion of Rasulullah who could say, and all the other companions said, he's the only one who could legitimately say that he knew when each verse was revealed, where it was revealed, under what circumstances it was revealed, and for whom it was revealed. And this is why Abu Bakr did not want him fighting in the Ridda Wars the first 6 months. Because if something happened to him, then that knowledge would be lost. He wanted to get that knowledge transmitted before something happens to Ali.
When we are questioning, we can question in a positive manner for learning purposes and knowledge purposes. Right? It's not considered as a questioning for
Yeah, see, when as far as there are etiquettes to questioning.
Right.
So, if you're in a class, and when we're talking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even the question needs to be stated in a positive way. Okay. We can bring up issues that, so-and-so says this. How do we deal with that type of, like people will ask, okay, he's saying this, how do I respond? Or what is the answer to his statement? So again, but the intention behind the question is the most important thing. And the intention behind the question should always be, how do I increase myself in becoming closer to Rasulullah? How do I increase myself in that knowledge that's going to take me closer to Rasulullah? The question, so first off, when we question, that should always be the intention behind our question. And then of course, now if somebody is being, if somebody is making statements, like, let's say, astaghfirullah, I was here talking nonsense. Then, under those conditions, depending on what level of nonsense I'm talking, etiquette, the etiquette changes completely. And I'll give you an example. One is, for most people, they shouldn't go to those places. So our sheikh, again, one time 2 of his students came, and they had gone someplace to some gathering where some guy was talking this nonsense, that Rasulullah didn't have ilm al-ghaib, and he could, all this other nonsense. And so they told our sheikh, they said, we went to this place and this guy was talking like this. So he asked them, he said, and what did you say? Because these are not moments to be silent. It's like, if I stood up here and I insulted your mother, Would you just, smile there and sit there and listen and continue to listen? No. You would get up and leave, at least. And you would leave in a manner that you understood, that I understood you're upset. You wouldn't just leave. You wouldn't just, let me just sneak out. And more than likely, you would respond to me by saying something. And then you would leave. All right. We have no iman if we do not love Rasulullah more than ourselves, more than our parents, more than our children, more than everything in the universe, more than everything. Period. And it's interesting, that we have people that go to these gatherings, this guy talks nonsense, and they just sit there. And then, they'll just, calmly, after everything's over, leave. They don't want to make... And then you ask them, what do you do? I don't want to make a scene. Why don't you want to make a... this is the time to make a scene. I don't want to create fitna. The guy talking is the fitna. So he asked them, he said, what did you say? When they said, you said like this and this. And what did you say? They said, well, we didn't know how to answer him. We didn't know what to say. Then he got really mad. He said, then why did you go? You knew who these people were before you went. It's one thing, okay, you end up someplace and you don't know who they are. But even then you can't leave, without saying something. He says, when they said we didn't know what to say, he said, why did you go? He says, first learn your stuff and then you can go. And then you can't leave without saying anything. And even if you're in that situation and you really don't, he's saying nonsense, but you don't know how to respond to him, you can at least get up and say, you're just talking garbage, and leave. So at least, because what you have in that situation is, if no one says anything, that becomes silent, you're silently approving what's being said, and everybody there, even those who are thinking like you are thinking, okay, this guy's not right. I don't know why he's not right, but I know he's not right. No one says anything, so now it becomes even more solidified that maybe he is right.
Yeah, you may feel that your knowledge is inferior.
Yes.
You start doubting yourself.
Yes.
You cannot respond to it.
Yes. But even in that condition, when okay, I may not know which hadith to pull to respond. But, okay, you need to make it clear, this is nonsense. Otherwise, what face are you going to show? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked you that, when this guy was talking about my beloved, what did you do? And before that, what face will you show to Rasulullah in your grave when the angels ask, what did you in truth used to say about this man? Or what did you know about this man? Oh, I knew that guy was talking this.
This has happened here in Atlanta.
This happens plenty, every place. That point, the example I gave, that was in Pakistan. But, I know I could start naming places. It's funny because, these same places, every time Rabiul Awwal comes around, and, they tell you, we don't celebrate the birth of Rasulullah, so we shouldn't be talking about it. And why are you talking about it? The only difference is we're talking in the positive, you're talking in the negative. And then these same guys are saying, celebrating the birth of Rasulullah is like celebrating Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving. And literally there's a guy in Atlanta who gave this khutbah in Jummah. And he's a mufti in the biggest masjid in Atlanta. Equating being happy over the coming of Rasulullah like celebrating Easter and Christmas and everything else. And he specified Easter, Christmas, Valentine's, Thanksgiving, and I think there was one other thing that he mentioned.
He said it should be like that?
No, he said, you know, us celebrating the birth of Rasulullah is just like if we celebrated Christmas or anything like that. Just, I mean, so again, biggest masjid in Atlanta, Mufti Saab is giving this khutbah. You know, it's funny because one time, that same place, when we used to go sometimes, and this was the thing with my father, you know, when somebody said something like that, you know, he did stay silent, which, so we walk in one day we walk in, me and my father, and there's the tafsir class going on a Sunday. So we walk in, and the guy giving the class, as soon as he sees us walk in, he literally, right then, he says, oh, okay, Saab has come, so we'll change the subject. You know, and then another time, this other guy was giving tafsir, and we get there, and every other statement of his is, oh, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a human being like us. So, you know, after the first time, after the second time, about third time, my father says, brother, don't say that. He was a human being, but he's not like us. He's more than that. And that guy said, oh, you know, I want you to stay after my talk. I want to talk to you. Then my father said, fine. So after you know, he finishes, he comes to my father and says, oh, you know, you confuse our children. So my father says, you know my children? He said, yes. Are they confused? No, they're good. But you confuse our children. You know, and then he goes on. He says, you know, you people that come from India and Pakistan, you worship Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So my father got upset, and he said, you know, you're accusing me of something I don't do? I honor and respect him, I don't worship him. And this guy is a doctor, cardiologist. Somebody who's considered big wig up there. And so my father, he says, you know, you accuse me of something, and then he said, oh, you know, there are people from Syria that do the same thing because he's from Syria. So my father, then he calmly, you know, first he got upset, then he calmly asked me, he said, well, did they come from India and Pakistan? You're saying people of Syria? No, they're Syrian. Why are you accusing people of, you know, you know, I mean, you're so confused, you don't even know what you're saying. But you want to insult Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. However, so subtly. You know, because by accusing his praise of being shirk and bid'ah, you are insulting him. So,
Jahiliyyah amongst the knowledgeable.
Yeah, these are the Paralik Jahil, you know, the literate ignorant. And, you know, because these are not, again, knowledge only comes to those who have taqwa. And taqwa is to humble yourself before Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And if you're not willing to do that, you cannot receive true knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not allow you to have true knowledge. And that's the point. Is, you know, oh, you know, what benefit do you have in saying, oh, he was a human being like us? What they're trying to say is, oh, I'm like him. That's what they're really trying to say. As part of the subject we talked about last night was قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws that analogy, that, you know, say to them that I am only a human being similar to you. But similitude has to have difference. That means he's not the same as us. His reality is nur. Bashar for him is a sifat, it's a characteristic. Our reality is bashar, and if we become close to him, we can attain some nur. So inshallah, unless there is any more questions,
I got one quick one. The video on WhatsApp, the attack on the mosque, attack on the Kaaba. I guess they were just showing like projecting videos and stuff on the Kaaba. I seen on the WhatsApp.
Are they talking about the attack that was back in 1977, or are they talking about
like
some
a concert or something they were showing?
Oh.
Is that like is that part of a major sign? I mean, I know it's signs of major, but it's like one of the.
Well, amongst the major signs haven't started yet. Okay. the major signs, the transition into the major signs is the coming of Imam Mahdi. So once he comes, then the major, he's basically the first major sign. Okay. All the other signs are minor. Everything before that is a minor sign. And Dajjal comes after him. Yeah. So Dajjal is part of the major signs. So before that, you have all these minor signs. And amongst the minor signs is that idol worship will return to Arabia, which we are seeing now. You know, one of the biggest mandirs in the world is where? Biggest stone mandir in the world is in UAE.
Oh, the new one.
Dubai, yes, the new one. They have
the Islamic stuff also in there, the Christianity also in there.
No, that's another place. That's the Abrahamic center where they have a Christian, they have a church, a synagogue, and a masjid, and an interfaith hall.
Oh, that's separate.
Yeah, that's a separate one. Here, this is separate. But when they inaugurated, all these sheikhs are there inaugurating this mandir, idol, you know, the Hindu temple. And in Saudi itself, you know, they're trying to bring back as historical. Oh, see, our history, we used to worship all these idols, and they're trying to bring back Lat and Manat and all these idols that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran as historical. So what you're talking about is that they had planned, and this is parts of what you're talking about, is that they plan on building a Maqab in Riyadh, which will be the largest building in the world. Is shaped like a cube, so like the Kaaba, and it will be basically an entertainment facility, plus housing and plus this, and you know, so you know, because this is why they keep bringing in these concerts and all these, you know, which they have in Jeddah. They literally have had concerts right on the outskirts of the city of Mecca, you know, and all of this stuff. And you have these sheikhs sitting in the front row. And so, oh, we didn't look at them. Yeah, right. Why are you there? You know, these like J-Lo and all these, you know, entertainers over there. Oh, no, we didn't look at them. You're in the front row, man. So these are all signs, yeah, that are being fulfilled right in front of our eyes. And people still don't want to wake up.
I heard it on a radio recently that from somebody who is not Muslim or Islamic, and nothing to do with Islam, totally non-Islamic person, that all the elites and the kings and sheikhs over there in Saudi are all Yahudis.
Yeah, so there are some people who say that their origin is Yehudi. Irregardless, that really doesn't matter whether they are or they aren't. If you look at them and they themselves acknowledge they are Najdi. And again, Rasulullah refused to pray for that place. And, you know, and Rasulullah said that the fitna of Dajjal will come from that place, or the fitna of Shaitan, or the era of Shaitan. So this is what we are seeing. So, you know, so, and if you look at all of their symbolism, it's all Masonic, Dajjalic symbolism. You know, the police badges, the way they build the buildings, every part of it is Masonic. So they're telling you openly who they are. And people still, you know, it's like what they say in English, hiding in plain sight. Yeah. So inshallah, I'll end here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us and fill our hearts with His true love and the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom they love. May He give strength and victory to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and where the Muslims are being oppressed over their oppressors. And may He guide us and give us true knowledge. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.